Yeah, I have no confidence in these batteries. Yeah, but whatever, we'll give it a try. Pride and Prejudice, I was thinking. There's a movie by that title. Pretty good. Old movie. Might have made a new, updated version, but whatever. But it's all this emotional, blah, 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 personal stuff. But I'm thinking of it in terms of the idea of bigotry. What is the better word? What's the better way to get to the idea that people just are so invested in ideas and notions I'll call them, and they will defend them, and defend them, and defend them, and it's a notion. And you're just like, why are they ignoring all the evidence for this defense, and so aggressively, and you're just, it's just surprising. So I was thinking about the cigarette. It's in this context of the cigarette tax thing, just because that's come up. And, certainly I grew up in an atmosphere where there was no prejudice against cigarettes. Most people smoked, and most people knew it was killing them. Most people just didn't give a shit. It was kind of, there was a realization by the time I was, by the time you got to the 60s and 70s, there was a real effort to discourage kids from smoking. Some acknowledgement that this is a dirty, rotten vice and should be discouraged. But it was still held rather lightly. The Flintstones made cigarette commercials. Everybody made cigarette commercials. It was fun to make. If you were a somebody, you made a cigarette commercial. I mean, fuck. It was just the cool thing to do. Just got prickered in my anus. Anyway, and so now there's this whole new generation, and they're just they have so eaten the Kool-Aid, the frozen Kool-Aid, whatever, however you want to describe it. But yeah, they're just so they're so Alex Jonesy almost on the subject. And I didn't really consider that. I mean, I didn't really think that that's what's taken place. I'm not arguing with people with some kind of rational perspective on cigarettes. No, I'm actually arguing with fanatics who have grown up on silly propaganda, and it's almost laughable in the context that there's been a lot of propaganda, against drugs. Lots of drugs are bad commercials, and they don't seem to have bought into any of that propaganda. But they sure have bought into this, wow, cigarettes are evil, evil, evil. And so anyways, I was watching The Amazing Atheist, I watched this video, but I've been watching the comments just as they come out on my tool indexes, the comments on his video. And, a ton of people just saying, enjoy your cancer, and, all this crap, and you're just like, what is this hostility? It's so obnoxious, and you certainly wouldn't do it if people were doing that to the fat people. Oh, God, it'd be outrageous, and there'd be marches on, there'd be, you could make jokes, from like South Park, but yeah, they'd all come out in their wheelabouts or their forklifts protesting the offensiveness. People are discriminating against their fatness. And it's just so ironic that these bigots are likely so easily bigoted. I mean, they're so easily put in exactly the same position and having the absolute shit kicked out of them. And you're just saying, why would they do that? Why would they be so foolish as to incite the very kind of bigotry in people that they're so vulnerable to? And so anyway, it is, I don't know what the answer to it is, beyond the fact that people are just so dumb, and yet they think they're entitled to an opinion, and their opinions are qualified by nothing but their own hate, their own crap. So it is typical bigotry, no understanding of reality, because it's like the idea of even racism. So much of it is built out of circumstantial, incidental, personal story or something. My black neighbors were, this, that, and the other thing, therefore black people are. And it's just so thin a perception, and especially when the argument isn't about what black people are generally. Even if most black people are something, and they are, most everything is something. You can put things in categories because they generally come out that way. Obviously, we know they come out that way for reasons that don't have anything to do with fundamental character, and has everything to do with maturation and all that kind of stuff. But they'll ignore all that crap. But even if it were true, the fact is not every black man is a crook. Not every black man is this. And those ones who aren't have a right to not be presumed something. And they don't even understand that simple principle. And that's where it all fails, is that the subject isn't what are this or what are that generally. It's whether or not the individuals have a right to be treated as an individual. And, so the same argument could be extended to things like liberty. And the irresponsible use of something should deny everybody access to something, not when it's unnecessary. I mean, if there's some way you can't protect against failure, like nuclear bomb ownership, obviously there'd be people who could responsibly own a nuclear bomb, but you obviously can't take the risk, because one failure would be catastrophic. But when it comes to liberty interests, obviously we're not in that circumstance. Hey, Pop! Yeah, it's me.
Sorry.
It's no problem.
So rude.
Hi.
No.
Yeah, dogs. Useless, actually. Yeah, I don't have a bigotry against dogs. I used to have actually exactly the opposite. I've had a couple of dogs in my life. But I've acquired a distaste, let's call it. But yes, they've lost their utility. Just because I've had neighbors with an uncontrollably barking dog for years, and it's just so fucking annoying. It so degrades your life. You can't just sit outside, have a pleasant evening. It just harasses you constantly. And just the other incidental, like, been attacked by a couple of dogs, vicious attacks. And just millimeters from catastrophic damage. And you're just saying, this isn't for what? Why am I being subjected to this risk? For what reward? And yeah, the reward part is the part I'm missing now. I just don't see. I don't have any personal interest. And so now am I a bigot? Because I have no personal interest, and it personally encroaches on my liberty, in the sense now they are controlling my lifestyle. I have to worry about the cat because people's stray dogs, might pick them off any day. Why should I have to do that? So this is a conflict created for good reason or bad reason. Is it just bigotry, or is it more substantial? And I think that's where these people, you could just point out that, look, you don't have a legitimate reason to be in other people's business. You don't have a legitimate reason for this persecution. You're just defending it because it's convenient for you, because it means, if you tax them, you don't have to pay taxes. So you think that's fun. It's always more fun to tax them than you, right? So that's just selfish. And then you certainly wouldn't want somebody to turn the same standards on you, would you? For every inconvenience you create for somebody else, you'd be persecuted. And again, with subjects like cigarettes, it just becomes a joke, because people are still citing things like secondhand smoke when for at least a decade now, those environments have been eliminated. There is no secondhand smoke potential anymore. It's not even legal to smoke a cigarette in your car if there's passengers in it, in some states anyway. So I mean, that's just it's not a real problem anymore, yet they still cite it as a problem. So that's like evidence of just a bigotry, right? They're using any excuse, citing death rates, when they don't cite the same death rates for their own vices, and certainly don't do it in any kind of rational context. Like when people are saying, enjoy your cancer, TJ, well, what do they think TJ is going to do? Live forever? He's not going to die of something like cancer if he didn't smoke. It's this whole argument. And in what circumstances? TJ seem like the kind of guy, who wants to be, some 85-year-old impotent fart, sitting in a rocking chair. I don't know. Maybe, but I don't want that life. And I certainly should have a choice to say, I'll compromise my golden wrinkly years for this indulgence now. But again, it is an addictive substance, so that's what changes the subject quite a bit, right? Is the nature of the dependency or the attraction. How fundamental is the liberty? And that's where it gets really funny, is because these people talk like smoking isn't a fundamental liberty. Well, yes, starting smoking, I would argue, isn't a fundamental liberty. Having the right to acquire the addiction isn't a fundamental liberty. But once you're addicted, it really doesn't get more fundamental than that. And, part of the argument is, too, it's the most addictive compound, in the top 3 anyway. Of all the chemistry in the universe, it's in the top 3 chemicals in terms of its power to fuck with a human brain, in terms of I need it passion. And these people will ignore that, just pretend that isn't a truth, and it's just this glaring, gigantic elephant in the room, that you can't get more fundamental than one of the top 3 most addictive compounds in the known universe. But logic isn't what matters. The rational argument doesn't matter. It's just about propaganda and bigotry, right? And what do we have as a defense weapon against propaganda and bigotry? Well, we can only argue against the propaganda, but we have to do that with slick commercials, and you have to have it, presentations. You just inundate people with it. Just flood them with the message. Flood them, until they get it. Until they're properly brainwashed into being a proper bigot. And once they've established the idea of it, they've established it as the good guy, the hero. Now it's really hard to knock it down. So it's like almost, you can analogize that to a lot of things, but you could almost not acknowledge that to like the popularity generated internet that we exist in. That once something gains popularity, it doesn't have to earn it anymore. It like has some sort of elitist status, and it doesn't matter how bad it gets or how much it fails. It's really hard for it to lose substantially. Yeah, it can lose in the margins, but it's a lot harder to knock the shit down once you cement it in place, I guess is the argument. So once people have a cemented perception, you really have to bang at it to get that perception out of their head. Once it becomes the war, who's the good guys, cowboys or the Indians, and they've picked a side, it's going to have to work to convert them. The conversion is going to be a lot more difficult than the initial propagandizing that got them into their that through which they acquired their position. But I guess none of this should escape an intelligent mind's notice. Bigotry should never be outside your capacity to find it in yourself. You should be able to see it, acknowledge it, recognize it, and compensate against it. And so I guess that would be the saving grace if people had enough knowledge to get there. So it's almost like the chimpanzees not being able to get enough words to do real vocabulary, using sign language. That seems to be the limiting factor, is people generically aren't smart enough to understand how to recognize their own bigotry, to recognize the play of their psychology on their philosophy, and to correct against it, to protect against it, to have some sort of intellectual integrity that will enable them not to be an asshole. So anyway, just again, this isn't terribly useful in terms of the fact that it's not providing an answer to the problem, but you have to think about the problem before you can solve the problem. So I'm thinking about it anyway, working on it, because this discourse is just so useless. I mean, I can't argue with bigots because they'll just keep finding any silly, stupid, irrational nonsense. They'll just keep throwing irrational nonsense after irrational nonsense after irrational nonsense, and you just have to keep whapping it away. And there seems to be an endless supply of irrational nonsense. Sorry, thinking about what I got to do. It's railroad tie day. Moving railroad ties from side A to side B, or vice versa. Yeah. See, they was on that side of the driveway, and I'm moving them to that side of the driveway. Yeah, very exciting. Shit. Anyway, until next time.